There were also a few parts where I was like, how are they still alive? Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I am doing a book review of Azura Ghost by Essa Hansen, which is a sci-fi that's coming out in this month or next month in 2022 from Orbit. So I received this book as an e-arc from NetGalley in exchange for a fair review. So thank you so much, Orbit. That was so nice of you. Azura Ghost is the sequel to Nofic Gloss, a book which I initially gave 4 stars to, but upon further reflection and given how much I talk about it to other people, I actually bumped it up to a 5 in my personal estimation of the book. It was one of my top 12 reads of 2021, and I highly recommend it. You can check out my review of it in my feed, my single book reviews feed, I think. So this review will contain spoilers for Nofic Gloss, but not for Azura Ghost. At the end, I have a few spoilers I want to talk about, but I warn you they're coming, and so the rest of the review does not contain any. Azura Ghost is a balancing act between complex topics and engrossing fight scenes. It's both a rumination on how we develop trust and, much more intricately, how it's the alienation that too much power provides that can corrupt a person, even more than the desire to control. So it's deep. It's a deep book, and it's really good. So what's it about? So, again, spoilers for Nofic Gloss. Caden has been on the run for 10 years with his unique starship in order to keep his adversary, Thry, imprisoned. But when an old friend he'd once thought dead reappears, he is lured into a game of cat and mouse with the one person whose power rivals Thry's sister, Abris. Now, with both siblings on the hunt for Caden and his ship, Caden must rescue his long-lost friend from their clutches and uncover the source of both his ship's power and his own origins in order to stop Abris's plan to collapse the multiverse. So Nofic Gloss itself is as much a learning curve for the reader as it is for Caden. It's a complex novel with an overabundance of technology and flowery language, so it takes a while to understand how the world building functions. Yet Azura Ghost, because we have learned all of this background in book 1, doesn't have that kind of mental hurdle to deal with. You know what the invented words mean and what you're getting into. It's not a novel you can read while you're tired or distracted, though, as it does require concentration. As such, the novel moves at a steady, fast pace the entire time, needing almost no space to sit back and explain stuff to us. That was nice. When it comes to the plot, it's pretty simple. Caden has been on the run for 10 years, despite having Thry captured in a mini-contained universe, and Lita, his sister, as we learn in the end of book 1, is alive and living with Abris. She's not really his sister, but whatever. He called her that. Abris is Thry's sister. If you remember, she had a small part in book 1, who is the ruler of Unity and a descendant of these Forerunner-type people called the Graven. The story starts with Caden being attacked by a woman who claims to be Lita with her consciousness inhabiting another body, and the story goes from there. Despite being a fairly simple plot, the story is great. It's not overly complex. I mean, it honestly couldn't be with the number of concepts and tech words thrown around in this novel, but it's easy to understand, and the characters' motivations are clear. There are several really cool fight scenes in this novel, including a badass one at the midway point that goes on so long I started to feel like I had bruises. In a good way, though. It was awesome. In truth, the novel is less about a twisting story than twisted people. It focuses on the duality of human nature. Every character is complex and has at least 2 sides to their personality. Caden is extremely strong and resilient, and you'd think he'd be a brooding jerk, but instead he's sweet and overly compassionate. He cares so much that he's almost self-destructive in his murder complex. Lita, literally inhabiting 2 bodies, is a shy thing who reveals in her proxy's ability to fight, but also fears losing the person she is in her real body. Indirian, I'm not sure how you say their name. One of the side characters can change their body shape and gender identity at will, and then we have 2 other main characters, whom we'll get to in the spoilers, who are also at war with themselves in different ways. Like the first book, this is not a novel about evil villains and white knights. It's about people put in a pressure cooker and emerging change, but also maintaining a core that yearns for what they once had. It's very easy to sympathize and understand all 4 main characters because we can see all sides of their perspectives. In this regard, it's a complicated story in truth because the people are not one-dimensional. While the story has a ton of action, it's a story rooted in people. I struggle sometimes to classify this book in terms of genre because it doesn't feel like a space opera, but the focus on the people makes it a space opera. It's really interesting, this book. It's such a fascinating book. Anyway, the entire point of the novel is about perspective. How we can feel and understand something so strongly, but looking at it from another point of view can change that. And when this view comes into conflict with what we've decided is the truth, we either adapt or we resist. And this book shows that in many different ways. Back to the characters. One thing I was slightly at odds with in the first book that carried into this book is Caden's attachment to his found family. It didn't feel to me that he was with them enough in the first book, and definitely not in the second, to have such a strong connection, especially after 10 years. Maybe I'm just a jaded person, but the last time But like the last time, we didn't get enough downtime with Caden and the other crew to really get to know them, aside from their like little quirks. Granted, if we did, there would be less room for the action scenes, and the novel is already hefty, so maybe that was a compromise. I did like the focus on Lita's character. It was great to get a second perspective, as book one was pretty much all Caden. It brought a freshness to the world building and helped round out Caden as well. I really liked how there wasn't forced romance between them either. That was really nice. I was worried about that. I mean, I don't mind a romance, obviously, but sometimes, sometimes when this one was good. It didn't force it. While Thry is still my problematic crush, my favorite character of the novel was C, the no-fic pup. Caden refers to him once as a sweet nightmare, which is so fitting. But how dare you, Miss Hansen, put my heart in my throat every time that damn dog alien was in peril. C was adorable and acted just like a dog. I loved him and I want one of my own, but I mean, I have enough dogs already. I don't need any more dogs in my house, especially dog aliens that are like the size of a Bernese mountain dog or something. I will say, I still have no idea what any of the aliens really look like. Even after reading the glossary, I still could have used a bit more in-story description of them. This was something I had trouble with in Nofa Gloss too, though it is kind of a minor consideration, and I mean, it might just be a preference thing. Some people prefer to leave it up to the imagination of the readers, and some don't, and that's cool. There's also a great deal of coincidence in this novel, but it doesn't feel preposterous. A lot of time when you have a few characters involved in events affecting entire worlds, it feels like plot armor that keeps them all linked together, but this book clearly thought about this beforehand. There isn't a paltry explanation at the end as to why they're all involved in this all the time, or a throwaway comment, but numerous references to how the situations are foretold or orchestrated somehow by certain forces. Whether this comes into play more in book 3, we'll have to find out, but I did like that, it didn't feel like, oh wow, there's like 10 people in this world. So I read this book as an ARC, an advanced reader copy, so some things might change somewhat, but there are some great bits of prose in this novel, peppering the action with some elegance. For example, it had long taught him he could bridle despair with rage and take it into battle. I thought that was super cool. Overall, Azura Ghost is not only a worthy follow-up to No Fic Laws, but surpasses it in many, many ways. I very much enjoyed it, and it was a great book with which to start off 2022. So yeah, Orbit, if you have any extra art copies lying around, physical copies, that you don't need or want, I would love to have a physical copy. If not, thank you anyway for the e-arc. I loved it, and I look forward to book 3. So I'm moving on to my spoilers now, so thank you for watching. I hope that's inspired you to read Azura Ghost if you've read No Fic Laws. And yeah, so a few spoilers. One thing I wasn't really into in the book was the whole moving consciousnesses around in different bodies. I'm not saying it's a flaw or didn't fit with the story or contrasted with the world building or something. It just felt more like magic than science to me, and I wasn't as into that idea. It was a big part of the story, so you couldn't really remove it, but I was just kind of like, this is on the border of too fantasy for me. There were also a few parts where I was like, how are they still alive? I mean, I realized they had the scour machine and advanced medical techniques and, some people are augmented and things like that. But some of the things they survived made them seem like superheroes, and I was just like, you guys are very lucky. That last chapter with Thry and Farron, oh my god, I read it like 3 times. The lead up to the romance was created with such subtleness and finesse that the little things that built to it in earlier scenes only became meaningful once that scene unwrapped. I adored this tiny little relationship, despite it taking up maybe 1% of the story, not just because it was incredibly well wrought, but because it showed yet another side of Thry. Honestly, these books would be nothing without him, and I guess I said C was my favorite character, but Thry is my favorite character, and I really hope we get more of him in book 3. I'm assuming we will, but we didn't get enough of him in book 2. So yeah, that's all my spoilers. Thanks for watching.